The Navy's mental health audit shows pitfalls in a program, and what a new study reveals about extremism among veterans. All of that and more today, May 24th, 2023. Good morning, early birds. I'm Zimone Perez, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, a new survey offers some perspective on extremism among veterans. The RAND Corporation conducted a study of 1,000 vets. According to the results, there is no evidence veterans have more extreme beliefs than the rest of the American public. One important note, the authors did point out that the results could be limited by how many people are willing to be honest about their extremist stances. The survey by the nonpartisan think tank asked respondents whether they supported a flurry of right and left-wing organizations and beliefs. That includes white supremacy, black nationalism, the neo-Nazi Proud Boys, or Antifa, which is, as some of you know, a far-left anti-fascist group. Just 1% of veterans who responded said they supported white supremacists. Antifa saw the most support at 5.5%. A Morning Consult survey of 2,000 registered voters in comparison found that 7% support white supremacy and 10% support Antifa. Veterans' beliefs in the far-right conspiracy theory QAnon were also less than the general population. The Public Religion Research Institute survey found 17% of the public agreed with QAnon theories. 13.5% of veterans in RAND's study believed the same. According to the results, about one-third of vets believe in the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. That conspiracy says people of color are being allowed to enter the U.S. to upend the majority white population. That's roughly on par with the rest of the country at 29%. Some Republican lawmakers are seizing on the results as a reason to end Pentagon efforts to fight military extremism in its ranks. Here's why it matters. Researchers conducted the survey after the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism found that about 1 in 6 people charged in the attempted insurrection to overturn President Joe Biden's victory had connections to the military. The attack drove the Department of Defense to hold an extremism stand-down, and for those that aren't familiar, a stand-down is a military-wide training. This one dealt with the potential signs and dangers of extremist ideology. But the discussion of extremism in the military has since been a source of contentious political debate. Republicans have decried the stand-down as an effort to politicize the military, all while Democratic lawmakers and senior military officials, for that matter, say teaching troops to identify and counter extremism is necessary to prevent the few troops with radical views from poisoning the wider force. Senior military officials reportedly folded under the political pressure from Republicans. According to a CNN report, they didn't follow through on recommendations to counter extremism that were made in 2021 by the DoD's Countering Extremism Working Group. The Pentagon didn't immediately respond to requests for comment about the report. For our listeners, this next story contains discussion of suicide. Troops, veterans, and family members experiencing suicidal thoughts can call the 24-hour Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 or 1-800-273-8255. They can also text 838255 or visit veteranscrisisline.net. An internal Navy audit found that the service has struggled to implement its suicide prevention program. That is despite crews continuing to grapple with shipmates' loss to suicide. The Naval Audit Service completed an investigation in January. Among the findings, the selected commands weren't able to determine whether all sailors completed annual suicide prevention training. That could potentially hinder a sailor's ability to help themselves or others. Navy Times obtained the audit results from a Freedom of Information Act request. It also found problems with the Navy's suicide prevention program also threatened the service's ability to fully surveil data and prevent crises. Navy officials said that the service has implemented all the reforms laid out in the audit and pushed other initiatives aimed at combating sailor suicide. Auditors found that the Navy's 21st Century Sailor Office did not track all so-called, quote, suicide-related behaviors. That includes everything from suicidal ideations to attempts and suicide deaths. The Navy's suicide prevention program is supposed to educate the fleet on suicide risk factors and warning signs. It's also supposed to foster resiliency and supportive command climates. Auditors found that the Navy lacked a, quote, complete detailed universe of suicidal ideations, and that suicide attempts were not being tracked. They found that roughly 60% of the Navy's 238 suicide attempts in 2021 were missing command information. Unit-level suicide clusters have tragically emerged in the spotlight in recent years as well. Two examples are the Mid-Atlantic Regional Maintenance Center and aboard the aircraft carrier George Washington. Investigators determined that the deaths were not connected in both clusters, but attributed systemic failures along the way. Auditors also found that none of the 4 selected commands surveyed could verify all of their sailors had gone through the annual Suicide Prevention Program training in 2021. Auditors said that that is a violation of Navy regulations that reflects a lack of higher-level oversight and internal controls. The audit also found that those commands did not hold crisis response plan drills. The drills would help to ensure that sailors understand how to handle situations that involve suicide-related behaviors. The audit was conducted from January 2022 to October. It looked at data for calendar year 2021 when 59 sailors died by suicide. The audit service recommended reforms that could help the service going forward. One was the 21st Century Sailor Office establishing internal controls and oversight over suicide-related behavior data collection and analysis. That, in addition to annual suicide prevention training and crisis response plans. In other news, the Army may look outside this universe to attract new recruits. For more on this, C4ISR net reporter Colin Demarest sat down with us to talk about the metaverse's role in military recruiting. Colin Demarest, C4ISR net reporter extraordinaire, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me back.
It isn't the multiverse. This isn't a Marvel movie that the Army's doing. What is the metaverse, though?
So the metaverse is tricky because it means different things to different people. We tried every day in the press room to, define it nicely, and it wasn't very easy. But I think the simplest way to understand it is the metaverse is a fake or virtual immersive world accessed through real world in your hands hardware. Think VR goggles or something similar, at least for now. It lets people interact from wherever or access information from wherever. And I should say, as I noted in my report, that searches for metaverse peaked in late 2021 and early 2022, according to Google Trends data. So we might be behind the curve here a little bit.
Okay. And how might the Army use the metaverse for recruitment?
Well, according to Training and Doctrine Command's Lieutenant General Maria Gervais, could be used to attract Gen Z and its successor, Generation Alpha. Gervais said the metaverse could be used to extend the Army's reach, whether that's through advertising or community contact or what have you. It could also be used to make introductions or for training or just networking purposes. The youngest generations, that's Gen Z, Gen A, are hyper-digital, according to Gervais, and the military needs to update its recruiting and accessions process to cleave with that. If I remember correctly, she said some of their processes are from the industrial age, so that needs changing.
And so we've heard a lot of stuff about recruiting challenges. So where do the Army's recruitment numbers stand as they're barreling toward their October 1st deadline for the recruiting year?
So the Army missed its fiscal 2022 recruiting goals by some 15,000 new soldiers, leaving it pretty short-handed. A shortfall is also expected for fiscal 2023. I don't have that exact number as it's still taking shape, but Army Secretary Christine Wormuth has said as much. And on that point, I should also shout out Davis Winkie, because he's been all over the service's recruiting woes, and I cribbed some of his writing for my story. So go check him out at Army Times and Military Times for sure.
Definitely. Well, Colin, thank you for stopping by the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, have me on some other time. I'm always around.
Thanks, Colin. For more conversations like that one, please like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on your radar for today, the Navy Secretary awarded medals to Marine security guards Friday for their part in the U.S. Embassy evacuation in Sudan. Navy Secretary Carlos Del Toro pinned medals to the chests of the 12 Marines who were involved in the April 23rd evacuation. The Marines worked to get the embassy ready for evacuation as a military power struggle erupted into violent conflict in Khartoum, the Sudanese capital. And according to an official press release, while all of that was going on, they continued to guard the embassy 24 hours a day. U.S. Special Operations Forces, reportedly including SEAL Team 6 and the Army's 3rd Special Forces Group, evacuated the embassy's personnel. No Marine Expeditionary Unit was there to assist in the evacuation because there were no ready amphibious ships in the region. Marine Commandant General David Berger said he felt that he had let down Marine General Michael Langley by not sending Marines to Sudan. Langley is the combatant commander of U.S. Africa Command. 11 Marines received Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals. That recognizes merit that does not rise to the level of a Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal. The Marines who still have time left to serve in the Embassy Security Program have received new assignments and will begin traveling back overseas. And now, here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. Defense News is reporting that Ursa Major won a contract to mature 2 engines. One is for a space launch and the other for hypersonic launch. Navy Times is reporting that the Navy relieved the commanding officer of the destroyer John Finn in Japan. The Associated Press is reporting that the Air Force is looking at ways to better control access to classified information. It comes amid new revelations surrounding Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira, who is the alleged source of one of the largest Pentagon intelligence leaks. And the Associated Press is reporting that Russian forces are fighting against alleged incursions into their territory for a second day. It still is unclear who is behind the attack. Ukraine has said it's Russian opposition elements inside the country, while the Kremlin says it's Ukraine saboteurs. And on this day in history in 2002, President George W. Bush and Russian President Vladimir Putin signed the Moscow Treaty. The agreement aimed to reduce nuclear stockpiles by 2/3 over the next 10 years. That's it for us this morning. To get more top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. If you liked what you heard, give us a like wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on social media at @defense_news and @Military Times. Also, please rate us and be sure to leave a comment. Today's Early Bird Brief is hosted and produced by me, Zamon Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by Nikki Wentling, Leo Shane III, Jeff Zazulowitz, Colin Demarest, and Irene Lowenson. Have a great day.